In 2017, Carl Icahn sold a building he never finished for $600 million. The Fontainebleau, Las Vegas sat on the strip for 7 years, 70% complete, empty. Icahn bought it out of bankruptcy for $150 million, then did absolutely nothing. Well, not quite nothing. He sold off the furniture, ripped out the fixtures, even removed the construction crane from the top of the building, then flipped the shell to another developer for 4 times what he paid. When asked about his strategy, Icahn said something that explains everything about the man. He said this: "We buy the shit no one else wants." This is the story of how a corporate raider who never gambled a day in his life became one of the most influential figures in casino history. Not by building casinos, by destroying them. Carl Icahn made over $3 billion buying distressed gambling properties, gutting their operations, and selling them for parts. He put thousands out of work, closed iconic properties, imploded a former president's casino on live television. But here's what makes this story worth telling. In 2023, a small research firm turned Icahn's own tactics against him, and the man who spent 50 years hunting corporations suddenly became the prey. His fortune collapsed by more than $15 billion. The most feared name on Wall Street finally learned what it felt like to be on the other side. So let's start at the beginning. Not in Vegas, not on Wall Street, but in Far Rockaway, Queens. Carl Celian Icahn was born on February 16, 1936. His father was a cantor at a local synagogue who later became a substitute teacher. His mother was also a school teacher. There was no money, no connections, just books and expectations. Carl was brilliant, not charming brilliant, calculating brilliant. He got into Princeton, where he majored in philosophy, writing his senior thesis on the problem of formulating an adequate explication of the empiricist. Criterion of meaning. In normal language, he was learning how to argue about what words really mean. It would serve him well. After Princeton, he enrolled in medical school at New York University. His mother wanted a doctor in the family. Carl lasted 2 years before dropping out to join the army. When he got out, he drifted into Wall Street almost by accident. 1961. He got a job as a stockbroker at Dreyfus Corporation. Entry level, nobody special. But Carl noticed something. The real money was not in buying stocks. It was in buying companies. Or more precisely, in threatening to buy companies. He watched executives panic when someone accumulated shares. He watched boards pay premiums to make problems go away. The term on Wall Street was green mail, and Carl Icahn was about to become its master. In 1968, he borrowed $400,000 from his uncle, bought a seat on the New York Stock Exchange, and founded Icahn & Company. His specialty was something called risk arbitrage, but the real education came from watching corporate America's soft underbelly. The CEOs were making millions while shareholders suffered. The boards rubber-stamped whatever management wanted. The companies were often worth more dead than alive. Carl started small. He would buy a chunk of a company, demand changes, and either force the stock up or get paid to go away. Tappan, Hammer Mill Paper, ACF Industries. He would show up, make noise, collect checks, and move on. Wall Street called him a raider. He did not mind. The term came with zeros attached. Then, in 1985, Icahn went after his biggest target yet, Trans World Airlines TWA, one of America's iconic carriers. He did something nobody expected. He actually won. The takeover was hostile in every sense. TWA's board fought him. Management called him a vulture. But Icahn found an unlikely ally, the unions. They preferred Icahn to the alternative, a Texas operator named Frank Lorenzo, who had a reputation for destroying labor agreements. So the unions cut a deal. They gave Icahn wage concessions worth $300 million a year. In exchange, he promised to keep them employed. He lied. Well, technically he kept them employed, while systematically dismantling everything else. Icahn took TWA private, loaded it with debt, then started selling assets. The company's prized London routes went to American Airlines for $445 million. Premium routes, gone. All that cash went to Icahn, not to improving the airline. By 1991, Icahn had extracted $469 million in personal profit. TWA was left with $540 million in debt. The airline would eventually file for bankruptcy. Twice. Before being absorbed by American Airlines in 2001. Oliver Stone later admitted that his meetings with Icahn in the 1980s helped inspire the character Gordon Gekko in the film Wall Street. The movie's famous line about greed being good, that was Icahn's philosophy distilled into a soundbite. But here's where it gets interesting. Casinos. Carl Icahn had never been interested in gambling. He didn't play cards. He didn't care about the flashy lights. But he understood something crucial. Casinos were just another distressed asset. And in the late 1990s, a lot of them were in trouble. His first major casino play was the Stratosphere. The Stratosphere opened in 1996 as an ambitious project. A 1,000-foot tower on the north end of the Las Vegas Strip, the tallest structure in Nevada. Problem was, it was too far from the main casino cluster. The company filed for bankruptcy within a year. Icahn bought the debt. Then he bought the casino. The price? Essentially pennies on the dollar. Everyone on Wall Street thought he was crazy. What did a corporate raider know about running casinos? Here's what Icahn knew. He didn't need to run the casino well. He just needed to run it cheaply. He finished the half-built hotel tower, but instead of trying to compete with Bellagio or Venetian, he went the opposite direction. Budget rooms, low table minimums, no pretense. The Stratosphere became the casino for people who couldn't afford the Strip's flagship properties. And it worked, not glamorous, but profitable. Meanwhile, Icahn was doing what he always did. Waiting. He held the Stratosphere for nearly a decade, making modest returns while the real estate appreciated. Then, in 2007, right before the financial crisis, he sold. The Stratosphere, along with 2 Arizona Charlie's casinos and a Laughlin property, went to Goldman Sachs' Whitehall Fund for $1.3 billion. Icahn's profit on the deal? Roughly $1 billion. He had proven something important. You didn't need to understand gambling to make money on casinos. You needed to understand debt, timing, and exit strategies. The casino industry was just another hunting ground. While the Stratosphere deal was closing, Icahn found his next prey, Tropicana Entertainment. By 2008, Tropicana was in bad shape. The company had casinos across the country, but mismanagement and the coming recession were killing it. The Tropicana in Atlantic City, once a jewel, had become so run down that New Jersey regulators stripped the company of its casino license. Perfect conditions for Carl Icahn. He bought in during the bankruptcy proceedings and became the largest shareholder. He installed his own CEO, a man named Tony Rodeo. Remember that name? Then Icahn did something unusual. He actually invested in the properties. He spent over $200 million on renovations across the portfolio. The Atlantic City Tropicana went from 7th place to 2nd place in gambling revenue. Some people wondered if Icahn had changed. Maybe he was not just stripping assets anymore. Maybe he actually wanted to build something. Those people misunderstood. Icahn was not building, he was staging. You fix up a house before you sell it. Same principle. In April 2018, Icahn sold Tropicana Entertainment to Eldorado Resorts for $1.85 billion. He had bought in during bankruptcy and walked away with roughly $1.6 billion in profit. Tony Rodeo, the CEO he had installed, Icahn would use him again. But between the Stratosphere sale and the Tropicana sale, Icahn made the most audacious flip of his casino career. The Fontainebleau. The Fontainebleau, Las Vegas, was supposed to be the crown jewel of the Strip. A 68-story tower, 4,000 rooms, $3 billion in construction. It broke ground in 2007, just as the financial markets were starting to wobble. By 2009, the project was bankrupt. Construction stopped when the building was 70% complete. This massive blue tower sat on Las Vegas Boulevard, empty and unfinished. A monument to the recession. Most investors saw a disaster. Icahn saw an opportunity. He bought the Fontainebleau out of bankruptcy in 2010 for around $150 million. The original developers had put in $2 billion. Icahn paid less than 10 cents on the dollar for their work. Now, a normal developer would have tried to finish the building. Icahn wasn't a normal developer. For 7 years, he just sat on it. No construction, no plans. He did lease some office space, and as mentioned earlier, he sold off everything that wasn't bolted down. Furniture from the unfinished rooms, fixtures, equipment, that construction crane at the top of the building, gone. Wall Street analysts kept asking what his plan was. Icahn kept saying he was evaluating options. In 2017, he sold the still unfinished shell for $600 million. The buyer, a New York developer named Steve Witkoff, would eventually sell it back to the original developer who finally opened the Fontainebleau in 2023. Icahn's profit on a building he never finished? $450 million. He never laid a single brick. Then came Donald Trump. Icahn and Trump were both from Queens. Both dealmakers. Both obsessed with winning. They had circled each other for decades. Sometimes rivals, sometimes allies. Their relationship would become one of the strangest partnerships in American business. By 2014, Trump's Atlantic City empire was in ruins. The Taj Mahal, Trump Plaza, and Trump Marina had all cycled through bankruptcies. Trump himself had cut ties with the casinos years earlier, though his name still adorned the buildings. The properties were shells of their former glory. Carpet-stained, service terrible, revenues collapsing. Carl Icahn saw opportunity. He bought the debt, lots of it, enough to control what happened next. When Trump Entertainment Resorts entered bankruptcy for the fourth time, Icahn was positioned to take over. By 2016, he owned the Trump Taj Mahal outright. And then he did what Carl Icahn does. He tried to cut costs. Specifically, he went after the workers, their health insurance, their pension benefits, the things that union jobs had guaranteed for decades in Atlantic City. A bankruptcy judge let him void the union contracts. The workers went on strike. Icahn claimed he had already lost $100 million. He said he would invest another $100 million if the union would accept his terms. They refused. On October 10, 2016, the Trump Taj Mahal closed. 3,000 workers lost their jobs. The union president called Icahn utterly incapable of making a decision unless it is mean-spirited. Icahn's response was cold. "This is a business," he said. "It's not a charity." He sold the Taj Mahal to Hard Rock International for roughly $50 million. The billion-dollar casino that Trump once called the eighth wonder of the world went for less than 5 cents on the original construction cost. Icahn claimed he lost $350 million overall on the Trump properties, his one big casino loss. But he still owned Trump Plaza, the other Trump casino, and that building was too far gone even to sell. On February 17, 2021, workers placed 3,000 pieces of dynamite inside the 39-story tower. At 9 in the morning, a series of explosions echoed across Atlantic City. In less than 30 seconds, the building collapsed into an 80-foot pile of rubble. Atlantic City's mayor had wanted to auction off the right to push the detonation button, with proceeds going to the Boys and Girls Club. Icahn's lawyers blocked it, saying too much liability. Icahn donated $175,000 to the charity instead. Then he watched from a safe distance as the building went down. The man who had made billions on casinos had literally just blown one up. While all this was happening, something else was developing. Something that would prove far more consequential than any casino deal. In 2015, Donald Trump announced he was running for president, and one of his earliest, loudest supporters was Carl Icahn. Icahn appeared in a campaign video praising Trump's business instincts. "This is what this country needs," he said. "Somebody to wake it up." He reportedly committed $150 million to a pro-Trump super PAC, though the group never materialized. When Trump won, Icahn got something unusual. He took an unofficial title: Special Advisor to the President on Regulatory Reform. Icahn was not a government employee. That meant he did not have to follow federal ethics rules. He did not have to disclose conflicts of interest. He did not have to divest from any holdings. This mattered because Icahn owned CVR Energy, a Texas oil refinery. There was an EPA regulation that was costing CVR about $200 million a year. Icahn started pushing the administration to change that regulation. CVR's stock nearly doubled. Senators demanded investigations. Ethics watchdogs called it unprecedented. Elizabeth Warren said it was beyond what we are talking about everywhere else. In August 2017, just before The New Yorker published an extensive investigation into his activities, Icahn resigned his advisory role. He said he was stepping down to avoid partisan bickering. The timing was convenient, but Icahn's casino career was not over. He had one more major play. By 2019, Caesars Entertainment was struggling. The company that owned Caesars Palace, Harrah's, and dozens of other properties was drowning in debt from a leveraged buyout years earlier. The stock had collapsed to under $7 a share. Icahn started buying, a lot. By early 2019, he owned 10% of the company. Then he did what he always did. He demanded board seats, and he demanded a new chief executive. Specifically, he wanted Tony Rodeo, the same man who had run Tropicana for him. Caesars gave him everything he asked for. Then Icahn forced the company to sell itself. The buyer was Eldorado Resorts, the same company that had bought his Tropicana properties. But here's the thing. Eldorado was a fraction of Caesars' size. This was like a minnow swallowing a whale. The combined company would own more casinos than any operator in America. The deal closed in July 2020 for $17.3 billion. Icahn had pushed Caesars' stock from under $7 to over $13. His profit on the deal was estimated at $500 million. More importantly, he had reshaped the entire industry. The Caesars Eldorado merger created the largest casino company in the United States. Icahn did not build it. He forced it into existence by threatening and cajoling until the boards had no choice. By 2022, Carl Icahn had made roughly $3 billion on casinos. The Stratosphere, Tropicana, Fontainebleau, Caesars. He had lost money on Trump's properties, but overall he had won. Massively. HBO released a documentary called Icahn, the Restless Billionaire. He was 86 years old, worth an estimated $25 billion, still active, still hunting. Then came Hindenburg Research. In May 2023, the short-selling firm published a report titled Icahn Enterprises, the corporate raider throwing stones from his own glass house. The accusations were devastating. Hindenburg claimed that Icahn Enterprises was overvalued by 75%. They said the company's dividend payments relied on what they called a Ponzi-like structure. They also alleged that Icahn had personally pledged over 60% of his shares as collateral for billions in margin loans. The stock collapsed. In 2 days, Icahn Enterprises fell 39%. Icahn's personal net worth dropped by more than $10 billion. The man who had terrorized CEOs for 5 decades was suddenly the one being targeted. His own tactics were used against him. The irony was exquisite. Icahn fought back. He called the report self-serving and misleading. But the damage was done. The company cut its dividend in half. The stock kept falling. By late 2023, Icahn's fortune had dropped from roughly $25 billion to around $8 billion. In August 2024, the SEC charged Icahn with failing to disclose his margin loan arrangements. He settled for $2 million without admitting wrongdoing. The fine was a rounding error, but the symbolism was clear. The hunter had been caught. Today, Carl Icahn is 89 years old. His net worth sits between $5 and $7 billion, depending on who's counting. He's still buying Caesars stock, still making moves. But the image of invincibility is gone. What Carl Icahn proved about the casino industry was uncomfortable but true. The most profitable strategy wasn't building resorts, it wasn't attracting whales, it wasn't creating experiences, it was buying distressed properties, cutting costs until the bones showed, and selling before anyone noticed the patient was dying. He never cared about gambling. He cared about leverage. He never cared about entertainment. He cared about exits. The thousands of workers who lost jobs when the Taj Mahal closed were collateral damage in a financial equation. The Stratosphere still stands, now called the Strat. The Tropicana properties are scattered across corporate portfolios. The Fontainebleau finally opened, owned by someone else. Caesars Entertainment is the largest casino company in America, a direct result of Icahn's machinations. And the Trump properties? The Taj Mahal is now a Hard Rock hotel. Trump Plaza is a parking lot. Rubble cleared, name erased. Carl Icahn built nothing that bears his name, but his fingerprints are on everything. The question isn't whether his methods were ethical, it's whether the casino industry ever had ethics to begin with. Icahn just played the game harder than anyone else. And when the hunters finally came for him, he learned what every CEO he had ever terrorized already knew. In the end, the house doesn't always win. Sometimes someone bigger comes along and burns it down. If you found this story fascinating, subscribe for more untold Vegas histories. Tell me in the comments, did Carl Icahn play the game brilliantly? Or did he just prove that the game itself is broken?